14 years later, and we are finally getting a brand new Final Destination movie entitled Final Destination Bloodlines. This will mark the 6th entry in the franchise, and with that, I thought it was the perfect time to celebrate, go back and rewatch the first 5 Final Destination movies, kind of reliving my childhood a little bit because I grew up on these movies in the early 2000s, absolutely loving them, thinking they were most clever, innovative horror movies, only to kind of have a wake-up call when I saw some of these and go, oh, these are actually a little silly and goofy, but still quite amazing. So that is exactly what I'll be doing here for you in this video. Is I'm just going to be giving you my personal thoughts and opinions on these movies. I'm not going to go into huge play-by-play of the making of them, the trivia fun facts. I'm sure you, Billy, in the comments can get down there and tell me, oh, did you know it was once an X-Files episode? They got inspiration from a real-life lady who got off the plane from a bad feeling. Did you know in other countries it's named Premonition? Okay. We get it. There's fun facts. I hate fun. There is no fun here. People die in these movies, and that is serious. Okay, maybe except when people get their guts sucked out of their booty hole. It ain't that serious. But you know what I mean. There's plenty of great YouTube videos and articles that give you some of that behind the scene goodness you want, but ain't none of them gonna tell you what old Chrissy boy thought at 5 years old watching the first Final Destination movie. That's right. Chrissy boy was 5 when the first one came out. 9 a.m. it was me watching Dora telling me to yell for a map in her backpack. And 9 p.m. was me seeing some people die. Cause they didn't watch Dora to know the map of death's design. I just blew your mind with that one. Alright, but enough with the introductions. Let's just go ahead and hit play with the first Final Destination movie released in the year 2000. So in this first Final Destination movie, we're following Alex, played by a young Devon Sawa, with his classmates who are going on a trip to Paris to celebrate the fact that they are graduating high school. But of course, things don't go exactly according to plan, with Alex having a vision that the plane will explode, killing everyone on board, saving a few of his classmates, only for them to start dying one by one as the movie goes on. I wanted to just get that main premise out of the way because I just want to talk about how much I love the premise of the Final Destination movies. You know me, I'm someone whose favorite horror genre is slasher films, okay? Someone like a Freddy Krueger, a Michael Myers, or a little Chucky chasing after you when you can just kick him like a football across a field. This concept of people who avoid death and then death itself is going after them one by one because you ruined his plans of when you were supposed to die, and now this unknown entity you can't even see is gonna toy and play with your life like some sort of game of mousetrap. It's just one of the coolest horror ideas ever put on screen. I think it's also pretty dang terrifying because death is a force you feel powerless to. But even the concept aside, I think what the first Final Destination establishes so well that the rest of the movies will carry over is this paranoia and this fear these movies put on us of everyday situations, okay? I, before being a YouTuber, couldn't really afford many plane flights or travel much. And by the way, thank you for them. I mean, Papa really appreciates you being here. But there isn't one plane ride that goes by without me thinking of the sequence in this Final Destination movie. Because even before jumping on the plane, it's these little hints that something just isn't right.
Live it up, Alex. You got your whole life ahead of you.
Have your belongings remain in your possession?
God damn. Trying a plane crash.
Leave it to Final Destination to make a dumpy feel ominous.
Trying a plane crash.
Honestly, I wasn't even prepared for some of the odd, comforting lines characters told each other to feel good about why the plane wouldn't blow up.
That's a good sign. Younger the better to be a fucked up god to take down this plane. A really fucked up god.
But the vision of the plane and how everyone dies one by one, I think is done so nicely and stands the test of time because of the minimal use of CGI. Since this was the early 2000s and a lot of that was kept to a minimum, there's mainly a practical feel with the set, the explosion, and I think that just leaves such a haunting feeling when you see it go down, and it's just an image burned to my brain and I think about any time I get onto a plane.
Because this fucking plane's gonna explode! It's not a joke!
It's not a joke!
I do think about that, and I've thought to myself, if I was there in that plane and heard a guy yelling out that it's gonna crash, it's gonna burn, would I believe him? I'd be honest with you, I think your boy wouldn't. I think I'd look at him like he's crazy, like he's a weirdo, put my sleeping mask back on, plug in my headphones, and blast that Evanescence. I will say there is something satisfying but frustrating about Alex being proven right about his vision, and then everyone just deciding to treat him like Jeffrey Dahmer.
You look at me as if I caused this. I didn't cause this.
If anything, the only person that treats him the right way is Billy.
Hey, Alex, I took my driver's test last week at the DMV. You know the guy that drives with you, during the test? He goes, young man, you're gonna die at a very young age. Is that true?
It's so funny seeing him be this dork loser in this movie when only a year prior, Sean William Scott came out in the film American Pie where he plays Stifler.
Well, polish my nuts and serve me a milkshake.
One of the most Chad douchey bag characters. I cannot see this guy anything else than Stifler.
I'm no, hey, Cardi, Diddy. I was in the bathroom and the lock, it was stuck, and oh wait, I didn't fight with anyone.
So seeing him whine, high pitch, getting bullied is one of the funniest parts of rewatching this movie. But now that the accident and survivors have gotten off, let's talk about the kills that go down in this movie. I think one of the benefits of being the early Final Destination films, a lot of the kills were still treated pretty seriously and felt very dark. This first one of Todd, the best friend of Alex, who he finds out is next through a nudie mag. Next time you on the hub, there might be a clue to save your friend, so send him that video. It could have some sort of clue in it. But watching Todd's death unfold, I still think is one of the most eerie kills in Final Destination, even if it's not one of the most bloody or gory, mainly for the way it's set up to look like he did it himself, the camera zooming in on his eyes turning red, the struggle to try and stand up when the bathtub is just filled with soap. It really gives you a sense to how powerless you are against this force. And again, as we go on through the Final Destination franchise, I kind of wish a lot of the kills kept this same sort of dark tone instead of becoming super silly. But once bodies start dropping, our main characters decide it's time to get some answers, where they break into a morgue, introducing us to the late great Tony Todd and his character of William Bloodworth.
In death, there are no accidents. Every single move we make, the airplanes that we ride, the red light that we stop at or run, it's all part of death's sadistic design.
It's a small and short scene, but Tony Todd really leaves an impression and lets our characters know that death has a plan. You've messed with the design. Even his final words to Alex is really chilling.
I'll see you soon.
Tony Todd is severely missed in the horror world, and it's just nice to know he was able to film one last cameo in the latest Final Destination movie. But getting back to here, more characters start dying in unexplainable weird ways. That bus hit scene is pretty iconic with the series.
Then you can just drop fucking dead.
So iconic, it's used even in the trailers for the new movie. But the next death that stands out to me in the movie is the teacher's death. Because of everything that's happened with the plane crash, she's not only creeped out by Alex, but she's decided, I'm just moving out of this town and starting a new life somewhere else. And so we're following her packing and getting ready for this, and we're just witnessing all the mistakes that she is making that death is then able to use to eventually kill her, like heating up a cup, then changing her mind last minute, putting ice and a cold beverage, causing a chain reaction for the mug to crack. Didn't understand that as a kid, but 30-year-old high school knowledge, Chris? Understood that. But a PC blowing up from a few drops of alcohol? Yeah, I don't think the math on that one's checking out. Since Alex already suspected that something was going on and that people would start dying one by one, he was first on the scene to try and help the teacher, but only ended up implicating himself in the murder with putting his fingerprints on the knife. And this is a big problem, because, guys, you're not gonna believe this. The ultimate agent is after Alex.
I'm Agent Ween, this is Agent Shrek.
Hey now, you're an all-star.
Yup, 1 year before the movie Shrek would come out, we were blessed with Agent Shrek.
Now, here's my card.
And Agent Shrek is a real one because...
Go ahead, get out of here. That kid gives me the creeps. There are a couple of moments there where I almost believed him.
But the other thing I loved about this franchise, it's not just the premonition in the beginning of the movie that helps them cheat death. I love when the films try to figure out the pattern of who's next. In this movie, they use the electric circuit as a map for their seating chart to figure out who's gonna die in what order, and even take it a step further with if we can pay attention and look for signs to save each other, we could skip our turn and try and survive this thing to the end. Which they actually managed to do with Carter's character, saving him from being hit by a train. Although if you look closely, the boy did pee his pants, so I don't know, die or let the homies see you peed your pants? I think I'm jumping back on those railroad tracks. I think it's so funny, after Billy's death in the movie, nobody cared. Nobody was like, oh, shed a tear or got all sad. Alex just goes into how he was right about Death's plan.
You should have been next after looting. That's the plan. That's the design. That's how I saved him. Just like the plane. Fuck, I saved him. And because I saved him, it skipped Carter and went to the next person.
And no remorse is felt for Billy's death. Bet if he had a hot mom in this one, they would care.
Oh no, my son Billy died to death.
I will admit though, this is where the first movie kind of starts to push it a little bit, because as soon as they figure out they can maybe avoid death, we cut to a scene where Alex is just in this house, secluded in the woods, and he's just death-proof this thing where he's sitting down eating cans of tuna and ruining Death's plan again when it looks like it was gonna try and kill him with
Arrested. Tetanus.
Can you imagine that becoming a regular thing in all the Final Destination movies? It's like, oh, Death gave me COVID. I'll be all right. And it gets even sillier when he realizes he's actually not next and has to flee this shelter running away from the cops on a boat. I know exactly what Agent Shrek was saying in that moment.
Alex! What are you doing in my swamp?
After a big final battle with rolling down hills and fighting off electricity, our characters survive, bringing us to 6 months later where they finally take that Paris trip, leading me to something I like and dislike about the Final Destination franchise, which is basically the implication that they can never cheat death and that even if you skip your turn, it'll always come back around to try and get you. I like it for the fact that that's pretty scary and it continues to have death as this all-powerful being you just can't avoid. But for a franchise where I have to follow along and love characters in a series, it makes me feel bad when a ton of these movies end with them just going, yeah, they survived, but a couple months later, they still died. Luckily though, some of the sequels will expand and create new lore to try and avoid death, leading us into Final Destination 2.
Turn this tragic story into something even stranger.
So with the opening of Final Destination 2, they do the really smart thing of having a guy being interviewed on TV.
Because in the end, no one can escape death. Today may be your day to die.
But it's basically used to just re-explain to the audience the premise of Final Destination without having to waste too much time the rest of the movie doing that again.
The death has this grand design that we all fit into. He basically screwed up Death's plan.
This to me is a perfect example of why I always believe the sequel to any horror movie should always be better. If not, it should always be more fun. I think about Child's Play 2, Hellraiser 2, Halloween 2. These are actual movies I kind of do like a little bit more than the first film, mainly because they just started having fun in the universe, no longer having to explain or build up the world again. And I think Final Destination 2 does fit into that category of not wasting a sequel, because in this movie, they not only up the body count, they also start getting a lot crazier with the deaths in this movie, not completely feeling ultra silly and cartoony like in later movies, but I do think this was the start of setting the bar and following sequels having to live up to it. This time we're following Kimberly, who's about to go on a road trip with her friends. I'm sure she's headed somewhere really fun.
Can we go get the guys? I'm getting horny.
If you don't get in that car right now, Kimberly, I'm getting in.
Oh, good one, man. Yeah, you're hilarious.
Oh snap, I'm already in the car. It's like looking into a mirror. Whatever though, just because he looks like me doesn't mean he's anything like me.
Then take care of it, okay?
Dude, look at those titties!
I think he might be my father. When I thought about the Final Destination franchise, I never thought about it like with other slashers or horror movies back in the day where they just randomly had people being nude. Like unnecessary nudity, I feel has just kind of gone away in most horror movies today. So it's almost like a whiplash feeling when you're trying to watch an old favorite and you're like, oh, they just randomly show some tatas for no reason. But what I discovered when watching the rest of these movies is tatas are the Stan Lee cameo of the Final Destination franchise. That's right. You thought Tony Todd showing up in these movies was a Stan Lee cameo? Tony Todd doesn't even show up in every Final Destination movie. You know what does show up? Titties. Titties do.
Okay, I mean it. Take care of it, okay?
You don't believe me? Keep watching the rest of this video. But literally 5 minutes into the movie, we are already put onto the highway that will lead us into the big accident for this film. And I think if I had to rank all the different accidents from the Final Destination franchise, Final Destination 2 ends up on top. The collective trauma we all have from avoiding a log truck whenever we're on the highway. I've actually done this. I've gone and moved out of the lane that the log truck is in because the scene where the cop just takes it to the face, bro. That is a crazy way to go, and everybody else also dies horrifically. Like the water bottle scene of the mom who can't hit the brake. I don't keep water bottles like that in my car because of this scene. And I said it in the first movie, but I'll say it again for the second one. The set pieces. This scene still holds up because it's a great use of practical and CGI. They actually destroyed a couple of trucks, had some explosions going on. Nowadays, all of these cars would be completely CGI and the scene would just feel like something out of Fast and Furious. But there's still a raw intensity feel. This is one of my favorite accidents of the Final Destination franchise. But of course, Kimberly has the visions. She survives, not without her friends dying. No, my brother! Ah! I'll never forget his last words.
Dude, look at those titties!
But Kimberly does manage to save a bunch of strangers who were about to die. And I think that's another thing I really like about Final Destination 2 is while a lot of these sequels, it'll be people within the same friend group, right? In the first movie, it was classmates. The third movie, it'll also be classmates. Final Destination 2 goes the route of making all the survivors strangers, creating a bigger divide on why would you trust each other once you start dying off one by one.
We all should have died in that pilot. Which means death could be coming for us. What if we're all getting that different strokes curse or something?
You know what? I think you're all certifiable. Can't believe I've been listening to this crap.
So let's actually get into some of these kills. We start off with a guy who had just won the lottery and is buying a bunch of stuff, even receiving phone calls from a couple of baddies.
Hey, Evan. Sorry I haven't called. Let's hook up. Call me.
And I keep talking about how Final Destination has influenced things in my life. It is because of this movie that I learned not to put metal in the microwave. Whenever that magnet falls on his Chinese takeout and he throws it in the microwave, that's the exact moment at like 7 years old I learned I'm not supposed to put metal in microwave. Thank you, Final Destination. But what I actually really like about this scene and what some Final Destination movies will lose is you trying to predict what will be the ultimate thing to kill him. He's got his hand in the garbage disposal, so is he gonna die from losing a hand? Is the microwave gonna explode and burn his face? Or is he gonna die from just the fire in his apartment? It's like a real guessing game and again creates that paranoia for you as a viewer trying to figure out what is going to be the thing to kill him, but it all comes full circle going back to the spaghetti he threw out at the beginning being the thing he slips on the fire escape, taking a ladder to the eye. And while there's more deaths to have in the movie, I do want to talk about the lore that Final Destination 2 brings in that I think makes the world more exciting. They could have just easily have done a rinse and repeat formula of the first movie, but they actually try to attempt to expand on what Death is doing, its plan, and how this actually does connect to the first movie. We find out that Claire from the first movie actually survived and has committed herself into an asylum so that she can avoid death.
Look, I don't know how to explain it, but I saw the pilot before it happened. I saved some people.
And now you think death is after you. Nice work. Maybe if you're real lucky, you'll wind up in here with me.
Looking back at it, I'm kind of pissed she is the only one that survived from the first movie because Alex was so determined, so prepared, and you want to know how they killed him off? We find out through an article the man got hit in the head with a brick. Bro died Home Alone 2 style. If you actually pause to read the article, it says that he stayed at home for 3 months straight, and the first day he went out, he got hit in the head with a brick. But that disservice to the character of Alex aside, I do like Claire's involvement because she is the one that connects them to Tony Todd, and we get a great scene of him emerging from red lights. And this is where we actually get a new added bit of tidbit on how you could possibly survive, adding more rules to the world where Tony Todd informs them only new life can break the cycle, them thinking that if they can survive until the pregnant lady gives birth, they will all be okay and death will leave them alone.
For every life, there's a death. For every death, there is a life. But the introduction of life that was not meant to be, that could invalidate the list. Force death to start anew.
I love that. Even though not many Final Destination sequels will even use that little tidbit or information, it's at least one way you can beat death. Because the ending of the last movie made it seem like you just weren't going to beat it and it was always going after you. Creating new life is a way to beat the Grim Reaper, and I think that's exactly what this little kid tries to do when he goes to the dentist.
If he gives me the gas and I wake up with my pants unbuttoned, we ain't paying.
What a wild thing to just tell your mom before you go into the dentist office. But this entire dentist office sequence, oh dude, it still unnerves me because I hate going to the dentist. I hate all the tools they put in your mouth, the little sound they make, and just these pigeons hitting the window, kid almost suffocating to death. Final Destination 2, I think, is the best movie in terms of ruining everyday places for you and thinking you're there to die. I will say one of the things I don't particularly love about Final Destination 2 is the way they get the signs or the visions about how to save one another. It's just a mishmash of the girl herself having premonitions all throughout the movie, but then the characters who don't have premonitions have to rely on looking at signs, whether that's just flashes of random birds or shadows on the ground that make out a hook man.
How many times am I gonna have to replace those goddamn windows?
Man with hooks.
I like the idea of signs helping you figure out your death that'll save you, even though, like, they give you such a terrible clue, like, pigeons gonna kill you. Seeing his body fold and turn to Play-Doh, horrifying, but pretty funny. It even gets to a point in this movie where you wonder if knowing the clue is actually the thing that causes your death. Because I think if they didn't say pigeons, that kid wouldn't have died. And if they didn't tell the mom that a hook man, who's very pervy, by the way, no reason for there to be a pervy hook man in this movie. Final Destination 2 gotcha.
Nora.
Who is this?
Nora, can you hear me? A man with hooks is gonna kill you.
If they didn't call her to warn them about this hookman, she wouldn't have panicked, got caught, and her head sliced in the elevator. So if I'm being honest, if I see a sign, I'm just not even doing anything. But getting back to how this movie actually connects to the first, my favorite scene is when the remaining survivors are in a car and they start explaining other near-death experiences they already had, where we actually find out each one of them had an interaction with somebody who survived the Flight 180 crash, altering their lives and changing their original death date.
Okay, so last May, I'm supposed to go and stay at this cheesy little bed and breakfast in Pennsylvania, right? There's this major gas leak that no one knows about, and all the guests suffocated during the night. I never made it. The bus I was on splattered some girl all over the road.
Was that not Abraham?
Yes. How did you know?
That bus you were on killed Terry Cheney. She was supposed to die on Flight 180.
You guys remember that theater in Paris that collapsed last year and killed everybody inside? Well, I had tickets to go. One night, I'm in Paris and I'm just tripping on acid and sipping lattes and such, and then all of a sudden, this dude out of nowhere just gets whacked by this falling sign.
Carter.
The teacher I replaced, her name was Val Luton. She was from Mount Abram. She died in an explosion.
The call about the train wreck that saved my life. That was the night I scraped up Billy Hitchcock.
Who are these people?
People who got off of Flight 180.
Oh, dude, I love that puzzle interconnected piece and the butterfly effect of someone surviving, interacting with the everyday world, and that domino effect leads other people to miss their death day. But after a couple of other insanely stupid but pretty funny deaths, our characters get the shocking revelation that in Kimberly's vision, the pregnant lady was actually never in danger, so her having the baby doesn't save them at all. Pretty good twist, but man, does it piss me off that it ends up with Claire dying. I just love the idea of legacy characters and them continuing on, and she had made it so far. To see her die in this way, like, oh, it just kind of bummed me out. Still though, that does lead the movie to introduce another way to cheat death, and that's actually to die and then be resuscitated back to life.
Hey, we did it. Thanks to you, we cheated death.
And yeah, that one actually kind of makes sense. You technically did die, but you were brought back, so, death cheated. I really like Final Destination 2. Like I said, to me, what I loved most about it is the expansion of the lore, trying to connect different people from the other movies. But I am realizing Final Destination 2 is very much responsible for later movies upping that cartoony, silly kill factor. Because even the last scene of this movie is so stupid. Early in the film, we had one of the survivors save a kid from getting hit by a news van. But as the movie explains, since that guy isn't supposed to be alive to save that kid, but also if they were never there, that news fan wouldn't have a reason to be there. Whatever. Because he saved him, that kid was supposed to die right then and there. And then kid goes to check on the barbecue. Barbecue for some reason explodes. That is the most SpongeBob death in this franchise.
You trying to get yourself killed, little boy?
Later.
Well, Brian was almost hit by that news van that day in the field, and your friend Rory, he pulled him back at the last second, saved his life.
I still had a lot of fun with this movie, although we have not even reached the fun of peak and perfection until we have gotten to Final Destination 3. Final Destination 3 to me is the peak of the franchise. This is my favorite entry by far, and it's the one I could endlessly rewatch. It takes everything you love from the Final Destination franchise, that dark, sinister tone, a great accident, probably the best cast of all the Final Destination movies, while also keeping the kills gory, but super entertaining to see unfold. And I never would have guessed that with the director of this movie being James Wong, not James Wan. He was the director of the first movie, but didn't return for the second Final Destination, but was brought back for the third one, which I'm actually very happy with. Watching all these back to back, the tone of Final Destination 2 and 3, I really do appreciate James Wong's style in just making the overall world feel very sinister, eerie, and creepy. I mean, he had that John Denver song in the first Final Destination, and in the third movie, it's a different song that every time it plays, it kind of gives me chills.
God damn.
But looking at this man's filmography, he directed Dragon Ball
Disgusting!
How could someone who brought me so much pain, disappointment, anger, and frustration also make one of my favorite horror sequels in a franchise? Doesn't make sense. But with this time around, we are following Wendy, who's played by the awesome Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I think she's such an underrated actress, and I love anytime she pops up on screen. She gives a much better performance than the Final Destination franchise deserves. Like, every time she witnesses a kill or is in danger, perfect crying face.
Let me out! Let me out! Oh, Frank. It's not only horrible, but can you feel how vicious it was?
But she's a senior in high school, and to celebrate them about to graduate, they all get to go to this carnival, where I really do think we are introduced to the best cast, or at least the funnest in the Final Destination franchise. You have Ryan Meerman, who's someone I always thought was just cool to see pop up in movies because I loved Luck of the Irish, the Disney Channel original movie. But some of you guys might remember him from showing up in Halloween Resurrection. We have a character named Frankie, who's just a perv to the young high school students. Man graduated years ago, and he's still preying on these girls.
If you raise your hands and just cup them, it'll look like you're holding the devil's balls.
And we'd want to do that. Why?
When else are you ever gonna see a dick that big?
But these two being the leads of Final Destination 3, I think made it really enjoyable for me. When getting onto the actual accident, the roller coaster. Okay, I was saying in Final Destination 2, that's probably the best accident of the franchise, but I meant that in a way that's probably one of the most traumatizing, because most of us have gotten in cars and we fear maybe an accident happening, and that highway sequence really brings up the worst that could happen in that. Final Destination 3, not everybody loves theme parks. Not everybody loves roller coasters. I love theme parks. I love roller coasters, and I actually never have the fear that a roller coaster will go out on me. But Final Destination 3 really finds a way to start making me rethink that possibility. The entire play out of the accident is so well done. Most roller coasters last like 90 seconds. This one feels like it takes an eternity and even manages to cleverly kill off one passenger at a time, either hanging from a loop-de-loop, getting destroyed by a pipe in your direction, or just straight off falling from the tracks. Like, this movie's responsible unfortunately, for a lot of guys having to ride solo because their lady saw Final Destination 3 and we're like, I ain't doing that, Bobby. You get on yourself. I think the other thing that makes this accident in Final Destination 3 stand out is I think it's the last good accident we have in the series. I even mean that for the newest Final Destination movie. Looking at the trailers, doesn't seem that iconic. I think this is the last majorly relatable and really fun accident of the series. Say what you will, NASCAR bridge or restaurant up in the sky fans. Well, yeah, very common. But like in all the movies, the main character has the vision. She manages to get off along with a handful of other people, while some stay behind and end up dying. Final Destination 3 perfects the formula of the franchise, from introducing the cast, having the vision, getting off the ride, and then beginning the kills. There is not a beat missed, and it does it so well that even though this movie is about the same length of every other Final Destination film, so much gets done in that short time span. The movie at times feels like it's only an hour long. So getting on to the first couple of kills, we have the two blonde friends who are very caring and understanding of the people who just died.
I was thinking of going for 20 minutes in the Muller. We did that for all the funerals and it turned out amazing. I was just thinking we'd go for like a tune-up. I just want to make sure that we look our best. You know, for all those kids that died that night, we'll never get a graduation.
The entire tanning bed death, I think, is another one of those kills that ends up, I think, in the top 5 list of Final Destination deaths. It has that factor of wanting you to stay away from something that seems harmless, but turns it really creepy. Getting cooked alive and having that shelf lock you in where you can't get out, that is terrifying to me. I think even worse because of the slow, gradual build from it just being kind of hot to your skin actually popping and boiling. This is also where we get double the Stan Lee cameo for the franchise. Extra crispy and medium rare, like you like them. As if this death, though, couldn't get any better, the transition from them dying to the funeral. Oh my, where are the Oscars for Final Destination 3? They also mentioned the PSP?
Hey, if you ever have to come to my funeral, man, bring me a PSP or something.
This movie just wins my heart. But after that first kill, of course, our characters have to then start piecing together what's happening to them. And they add an element in this movie that I think is my favorite in terms of them trying to figure out death's design and how to avoid it. Unfortunately, we don't get the Tony Todd cameo like in the last 2 movies. I'm assuming there just wasn't a natural way for them to come across that character. I'm still happy, though, they got Tony Todd as a voice cameo, talking as the devil animatronic on top of the roller coaster. Like, okay, fine. At least there's some Tony Todd presence in there.
For every life, there's a death. For every death, there is a life. You may never return from devil's life.
But for Final Destination 3, they figure out that photos are actually a clue into how each one of them will die, and they bring up some pretty wild photos.
That's the last photograph Lincoln posed for. The photographic plate was broken, causing a line that can't be removed, exactly where he was shot. Look. See the shadow?
But I absolutely love the photos as the clue. I think it's the best use of it in the Final Destination franchise, because sometimes I just get so sick of these visions or these random flashes that don't actually make sense, like pigeons just showing up on the window or a train or a bus like in the other series. I kind of like the fact that they just have the clue for everyone's death laid out for them and they have to interpret it, no matter how silly.
Well, this is obvious. He's falling off a ladder.
A rope ladder, though. Maybe he might hang. Or maybe it's not that literal. Could there be anything in these prizes?
Or what, like he's gonna get crushed by a giant SpongeBob?
That's 2 SpongeBob references. I think one of the only biggest downsides to Final Destination 3 is it does very little to connect itself with the rest of the movies. Like, yeah, they do mention Flight 180.
And I found out about this high school French class from New York. 6 years ago, they went on a trip to Paris. They were boarding. A kid had a vision that the plane was gonna explode. Just like you did. He freaked out, and 7 people got off the plane. Just like us.
But they don't try to connect these characters to characters from other movies. And aside from the photos being the clues to Death's plan, they also don't add much lore to the world. Like, I think one of the biggest Easter eggs of this movie is just the drink responsibly truck that was also on the highway in the second movie. Like, there's your kind of biggest connection. I do think they do a great job, though, of sticking to most of the kills being in familiar places that maybe everyday people will go through. I mean, we had the tanning bed, we had the entrance of the drive-thru, and the gym sequence. Like, that is one I do think about every time I enter the gym, which is about 3 times a year. This sequence really highlights why I kind of wish this director would stay on to the later sequels, because he does such a good job of creating the suspenseful paranoia feel with everything around them. The boombox getting electrocuted, people dropping weights in the gym, grunting noises, all escalating to plates smashing this dude's head. I don't know how that's even physically possible, but I believe it'll happen, and now I'm never going to the gym. I'm fat because of you, Final Destination 3. Another funny thing I noticed, though, when watching Final Destination 3, it completely skips out on the police investigation or them suspecting them. Like, the police are present there, and they are constantly being interrogated, but the movie doesn't decide to waste any of its time showing you those scenes, the pointless conversations of trying to explain Death's plan to the cops. Like, I love that about Final Destination 3. The same cops show up suspecting, like, it's weird that these guys are at every death, but the movie's smart enough to know we just end up going in circles, so let's just not even have the cops be a major part of this movie. The Home Depot sequence is another really clever use of the space. Like, that's just an environment that is built for Final Destination. So many deadly, pointy things. The possibilities are endless of how someone could die, so having it all end with a nail gun, Hellraiser style, it's sick. I do just wish they played a little bit more with the lore, because they only implement the whole rule that if you skip someone on the list, it goes to the next person. They had something creative in mind with having the character of Ian McKinley survive, but realized this and that maybe he just needs to kill the last person in line to save everybody, but that plot line is short-lived. I do like this entire 4th of July sequence and this girl getting dragged by a horse. I'm sorry, but every tug from that horse, she should just have her neck snapped. I don't know how she survives as long as she did doing that. This is where I will admit, though, the really fast-paced, having no filler, getting straight to the point, kind of makes the ending of Final Destination 3 feel a little hollow, because as soon as our character survived this like 4th of July bloodbath, within seconds we are now 6 months later and put on another accident where coincidentally 6 months later all our surviving characters are on a subway that is going to get derailed and Death is going to finish what he started. Like, it's cool that we actually get 2 visions, 2 accidents in Final Destination 3. Love that for this movie, but it's like, dang, we end in the films again by just saying, aha, too bad, everyone dies. See you in the next one. Those are the endings I hate for Final Destination 3. I would like a little bit more lore, or maybe some way a character could survive. The film does cut off, I guess, before seeing the premonition actually happen, so in my mind, they all did survive. They were actually screaming because they were that happy they all lived. That's how Final Destination 3 ends in my head. But I love this movie. Like I said, I think even with some of its flaws or not doing much to expand the lore, it is the perfect use of the Final Destination formula. It is the most fun. It is the most entertaining. To me, the franchise actually peaks here, and bro, let's just get on to the dumpster fire of the next couple movies. Final Destination 4, or as it's titled, The Final Destination. Not sure if that's because they actually thought they were ending the series here, or they were threatening the audience with delivering a movie so atrocious, so horrible, so intense levels of stink, they thought it would just kill the franchise. The movie released in 2009, right at the height of this 3D trend that just happened to be everywhere. You could buy 3D TVs or a Nintendo DS with 3D capabilities, and this was also the same year James Cameron's Avatar came out, and that only catapulted the 3D trend for a couple more years. I'm actually someone that does not mind the 3D trend. If I think a movie really warrants it, I will happily see it in 3D and actually feel immersed into the experience. But with the Final Destination, this was a clear gimmick. Every use of 3D in this movie just feels so outdated, so corny, so cheesy. It feels also like that's only where the budget went, because this is by far the ugliest and cheapest looking Final Destination movie. I've seen corn sets with more production value than whatever is in this movie. But I think what hurt me the most is this was my first Final Destination movie in theaters. I was 14, freshman in high school, convinced my dad to buy me and my friends tickets to go see it, and I was just crushed with how awful and abysmal the movie was and how I dragged all my friends to see it. That day in 2009 was also the last time I had seen the movie, because I hated it so bad I never wanted to watch it again. Before these reviews, I had to pop it in, and man, it's not aged well. So, like, not even 30 seconds into the movie, we are already just hit with an all CGI shot of a crowd at this NASCAR event with, I guess, one cool little Easter egg, McKinley Speedway, McKinley being the name of the high school in Final Destination 3. It's the first sign of what I really think makes this Final Destination movie so awful, is its overuse of CGI. There's been plenty of CGI usages in the previous movies, but you've seen me now talk about the practicality involved and how some of it feels still gritty, real, and even though some of these films are now approaching 20 years old, they hold up. Almost none of the effects or kills in Final Destination 4 hold up. In fact, I will see Mr. Beast with better visual effect shots than whatever budget this movie had. I'm also just not a big fan of the accident. This is where I really think we started scraping the barrel of common places people go to. And while I know there will be people in the comments letting me know NASCAR's pretty popular, Chris, people like to watch that. Well, I don't. And I never will see myself in a NASCAR event, so to me, this is not relatable. But not even just that, just the whole car accident explosion just feels too similar to the second movie. I feel if they wanted a mass crowd event, this could have been a concert. I feel like that is something they have yet to touch in the Final Destination world. And you look at a lot of the things that happen when the crowd goes crazy, with people running up the stairs, pushing each other. There's things you could have done with the concert setting that I felt would have worked better. But that's the setup we get for this movie, and we continue on with that, where I want to highlight other things I just hate about this film. For one, its style and tone. This will be the Final Destination movie that will really start a new era of the way these movies feel now. I'm willing to admit now, having sat down and rewatched the first three movies, that yeah, they actually do have a bit of a silly tone. Some of the kills at times feel goofy, but I still stand strong that they at least kept a dark, eerie atmosphere. They had you worried about death being around the corner, and there were times you genuinely felt bad or disgusted by some of the kills that happened on screen. Everything in the Final Destination is overly bright and shot like it's some sort of rom-com. The cinematography here has no semblance of a dark, moody tone, and the opening title card sequence perfectly encapsulates what I mean by them changing the tone of scary, eerie movies to this rock star, I'm about to go to Six Flags kind of feel.
But to others, they're an indication that there are
It's such a night and day tone to the opening title cards of the previous movies. This is not to say I ever think of Final Destination as like a Silence of the Lambs or an Exorcist, but I do appreciate a level of groundedness or sincerity with the franchise, just leaning into, hey, how stupid are our movies and how dumb do our characters die? Hope you have a good time. Grab a beer, buddy. Leaning into that vibe of the series, I think just makes it feel all cheap. But if you don't believe me, let's get into the first kill, which, my goodness, I don't even know how I can play some of this with it being the year 2025. After the accident, we follow our survivors at a memorial where we get this insane interaction with a character whose name I had no remembrance or even cared about. So right now in doing this review, I quickly looked up on IMDb, what was this guy's name? And IMDb just has it listed as racist, and his wife was named Racist Wife. real good attention to detail, the Final Destination. So I don't even know if this character has a name in the movie, but it's a fair freaking name to give him because this guy is mad at the security officer who happens to be black. And George, the security guard, held him back from going in to save his wife from everything going on. So now he feels anger towards George and like it's his fault that his wife isn't here. So he says the only clear thing you could say to somebody like that.
Well, nobody lives forever, nigger.
Jesus, man. Why is that necessary, Final Destination? It just shows you how times have changed in Hollywood and how someone just thought, wouldn't it be funny if like we just had like a really racist guy in the movie and he just says the N-word? Let's have him call him Chocolate too. Again, they were trying to kill the franchise with this movie. So now he's headed to George's house to get payback, and this entire death is just played up for a laugh. There was this great thing that a lot of the Final Destination movies would do where they would play an eerie, creepy song to let you know death is there, they're watching you.
God damn it. Tired of plane crash.
And I really thought the third movie did it best. This fourth movie, it's just one big joke. Yes. Why can't they be friends? The other thing that like really bums me out about the Final Destination is they actually had some good scenarios of common places where we could all start to have that traumatic feeling again of, oh, I would love to go there, but Final Destination has ruined it for me. Here we get a scenario of a mom who's going to get a haircut. As someone who gets haircuts all the time and having to sit in that chair with the buzzer and the scissors and all the little things that could go wrong, this was a cool idea for a sequence, and it's just wasted in this movie. Death in the Final Destination doesn't even feel like death. It just feels like an actual ghost who's just pushing and moving things, when that kind of stuff would happen in the other Final Destination movies, it felt like death or the ghost, whatever you want to call it, was following the rules of physics and would actually make the way people died look like genuine accidents, when here, this spray can is literally just being moved by nothing. Not air, not a crooked shelf. It's just moving on its own. And it's like that a lot of the times throughout this movie, and it just kind of takes away that creepy feel that death can accidentally start a chain effect that'll cause you to die, when here it's literally just Casper going, you're dead now. I also hate the way the main character is given signs or premonitions about each death, where it's just a flash in his head of random objects relating to the kill. But all these random objects are conjured up by such terrible CGI. It's one of the ugliest forms of signs in the Final Destination franchise. But man, let's just get into what I think is the most horrific kill that I don't know if it's brilliant and actually scary or just stupid. We have a simultaneous kill going on of this Chad at the pool and this friend who's going to get a car wash. The car wash sequence I actually think is done in an interesting way where it does feel slightly horrifying, even though I feel like there's a dozen ways you could have gotten out of that situation. But it felt like the car wash scene did have some effort put into it and it did feel creepy. The pool scene, well, we get our Stanley cameo of followed by a guy who jumps in the pool as it's being drained, ends up getting his butt right on the drainer, and it sucks so hard all his organs come out his butt and through the drain pipe. Look, is that horrifying? Is that scary to think about? I've never thought about my pancreas, my liver, my lungs being kind of smoothied out of my booty hole. Never. So yeah, that's kind of scary, but it just feels so stupid watching it unfold. And you really think about the actual logic of like, how powerful could that thing be? Like, could it really suck that hard? And if it could,
Come and get me, Dad!
it's even kind of funny to me that this movie was directed by the same director of Final Destination 2, where I was noticing some of the silly, exaggerated nature of the kills, but that movie still felt grounded and kind of serious within its world. The second film had a great scene of a character who didn't want to die by Death's plan, so he had a gun and was just willing to shoot himself over and over, but nothing happened, even though there was 6 bullets in the gun, and he was firing over and over, he was crying, he was sobbing. It was actually kind of a pretty sad scene.
No!
6 in a row? That's impossible.
And it let you know that even death won't let you die early until it's your turn. And we get a scene similar to that here, where you think it's going the dark and sad route because the nice security guard George is just wanting to hang himself, has accepted death, wants to be with his family.
Even Janet either destroyed Death's list and all of us are home free, or it skips her for now and then I'm next.
George, you can't give up.
No, it's okay. I'm at peace with it. And my family's waiting for me. I'm ready to go.
Our characters feel like they arrived too late, and then...
Oh my God! You're trying to kill yourself.
I'm just trying to give God what I thought he wanted. I've been trying to kill myself all day. Took a bottle of painkillers. I just threw them up.
Bro, George was trying to kill himself all day and is annoyed that he can't die. I don't know, I just think it's so funny how angry he is that he can't kill himself. But coming to the end of this movie, they try doing the whole twist thing that other films have attempted to do in the franchise, where they forget about somebody in the pattern, and this one being a cowboy hat guy who moved seats when the accident happened. He's in the hospital about to be crushed by another racist in the movie.
Okay, Mississippi? Why do you care? You know how many of your kind I killed in Korea? I'm Chinese, sir. Same difference.
What was up with the writer of this movie? Did you just like, they're gonna love this one? All leading us to a theater sequence that I wish was saved for a better Final Destination movie. I hate that they ruined the potential of what a theater kill could look like in this garbage of a movie. Because if you want to think about the most common place Final Destination fans go, it's the movie theater, where we go to watch the movie. But it's again just treated like a meta wink at the audience joke, with one of the characters saying,
I was meant to see this movie.
I will give them this though. I think the one memorable thing that I do think catches on after watching this atrocious movie is the escalator scene. That is pretty horrifying. We've all been on those things. We all worry about what could happen if we get caught into one, and seeing a character get sliced in. That's kind of effective. But again, it's all for nothing. It turned out to be another big premonition where the main character was able to avoid the theater explosion, save everybody, end up in a coffee shop, only for the movie to end with what I hate the most, everyone just dying anyways.
Oh, brother, this stinks!
This is awful, man. I really would love to know what any redeeming qualities about this movie you find. This is one of the movies that makes me embarrassed as a Final Destination fan. All the other movies I'll campaign, I'll cheer for, I'll find little things that I enjoy, but this one, oh, dude, get it away from me. I'm even gonna admit this movie was so bad that its stinkiness kind of attached itself to Final Destination 5, where I felt like I remember that one also being awful and kind of the level of this one, but maybe I was wrong. Final Destination 5 is a movie I owe a giant apology to, because for the longest in my head, because of the atrocious quality that was the Final Destination, I kind of just had lumped in Final Destination 5 with it being that this is just a new era of the series. They're a joke, they're unserious, the tone is all wrong, and really the only thing I had remembered about Final Destination 5 is the gymnast that gets folded like a taco, and the mind-blowing twist at the end that I thought was kind of the only reason people were even giving this movie a chance. But in rewatching, I feel like this was a major course correction. This was the film trying to put itself back on track and remind people, hey, Final Destination can be fun, but also expand on the lore and creep you out at the same time. In Final Destination 5, we follow Sam, who, although he looks pretty similar to the guy of the last movie, but Sam in this movie actually feels like a real character. I'll even go as far as to say he's probably one of the most likable main characters of the Final Destination franchise.
You just need to make a decision. You know, are you gonna be chef or are you gonna be sales guy? I'm saying that to you as your friend because as your boss, I'm ready to fire your ass.
As your friend, I appreciate that advice.
Follow him and his group of co-workers who work for a paper company on their way for a corporate retreat when on a bridge a big old accident happens, causing them to die. I will say I like the bridge sequence more than the NASCAR sequence of the last movie. At least a bridge is something that a lot of people would go through, and there is an actual fear of people who won't even cross bridges because they're that frightened by them. So although not my favorite accident, it's one I appreciate more than the NASCAR one. And although Final Destination 5 was still made with the 3D gimmick in mind, it is much more toned down. The overall production value of the world is back, where everything actually feels like a real movie. Sure, you have your moments of wonky, weird CGI, but at least there's competent cinematography this time around that adds real depth and shadows to certain scenes. Never thought I'd be so happy just to see night or rain in a Final Destination movie, but I much prefer it over the overly lit sets of Final Destination 4. I'm also really happy Tony Todd was actually brought back in for a physical role this time around. We had not seen him physically since Final Destination 2. Final Destination 3, he just had that voice cameo, but wasn't anywhere near Final Destination 4, which good. I would not want Tony Todd to be another thing ruined by that movie. But his presence in this film isn't just to keep on this running cameo that goes on in the series. He brings a new rule into the world. Yes! 5 movies in, and we're still expanding how to possibly survive in the Final Destination universe. Putting pause on that rule though for 1 second, let's go into the first couple of kills. So once we have our survivors, one of the first kills we get is a gymnast who is training for a really big event. And I attributed this awful kill as one of the reasons I didn't like this film, but watching it back, although I still think it's pretty dumb the way she ended up dying, just randomly folding and breaking all bones out of nowhere, the build-up and setup to the death was treated really well. They bring back the guessing game of the audience trying to wonder what will be the thing to kill the person, teasing us with the nail possibly hitting a foot, like that's just gonna creep out anybody. The air duct on top possibly dropping, like it was bringing back in that paranoia, anxiety feeling you should get when watching these films. That is to say, it's not without its stupid characters and just overall funny deaths. We have this one idiot whose named Isaac, who fancies himself a womanizer, although every woman around him is obviously disgusted.
Hey, did you try that little jam bread, whatever your boyfriend made? I can tell you he's a oh, that's what it is. Did I touch a nerve? Hey, Ma, look at me. Look at me. Hey, if you ever need anyone to talk to, tell her like I'm a really, really good listener by a lot of ladies. Shh, wait, don't say anything. Tell me it's the Kimber from last Tuesday.
He steals a massage coupon from the desk of one of his dead co-workers, and I had completely forgotten about this massage kill, and as someone who recently went through a massage, that's me. Wouldn't you like to rub that back down? I have a new sense of fear for this environment, having actually gone through it. I was being beaten and tossed around by a little lady, same as him. Hey! My lady also said that too. Once the jokey feel is kind of toned down and we're getting the acupuncture and the little steps that cause him to fall with all those needles on him, you feel pretty horrified and never want to go through acupuncture with this being a possibility. But it is at this point that we find out from Tony Todd that there is a new rule, a new way you could possibly cheat death.
You shorted death. So you let death have somebody else in your place, and then you take their spot in the realm of the living. All the days and years that they've yet to live.
We kill someone, we get their life. Is that what you're telling me?
I don't make the rules.
I love this new rule in the Final Destination universe, and I think it opens the door for so many fun possibilities in the future. Essentially, knowing that you're going to die, if you decide to kill someone else, well then they take your place and you earn whatever years they had left. And this piece of information is used on Peter and sends him down a rabbit hole that I don't think we'd really seen in the universe. Almost every Final Destination movie has that asshole character, that guy who's just mean, loud, a bully, and they're basically in insufferable to watch and you're just waiting on the moment that they end up dead. But Peter started out very different. He seemed like a genuinely nice guy. He cared about his girlfriend, and once she died, he started taking in that darker path. And we get a really great scene about him contemplating killing a random stranger just so he could survive.
I was up all last night thinking about if I could really do it.
Do what?
Take someone else's life. If I could actually kill some stranger. And I thought about it, and I convinced myself that, yeah, I could.
Puts him so far down the rabbit hole that he ends up going after his own friend and girlfriend, mainly the girlfriend Molly, because she was someone who was never going to die in the accident. She was always going to survive, and Peter just thought that unfair when his girlfriend died, so he was wanting to take her place, ending up killing the officer instead. But in these moments where he's just full on killer mode, trying to go after these characters, and death ends up working on his side,
Not your time yet.
I just think about how awesome of a Final Destination movie there could be if, let's say, there was an accident, but a serial killer was saved, finds out about this rule, and then just uses it to go after the rest of the victims with death on his side, conveniently putting him in a spot where he can get the upper hand on other people, would easily avoid death because death would be protecting him. That'd be such an awesome change of pace for the Final Destination franchise, is to make one entry technically a slasher film. So not only did I like the lore that they added onto this movie, I thought the way it was implemented into the movie with Peter descending into madness was fun. If we go into one of the next memorable deaths of this film, the laser eye sequence, that was horrifying to watch. Seeing that laser be so intense that it was even burning her hand, but the actual effect and CG use of the eyeball, that gave me the chills. That makes me never want to go see an eye doctor. Although I hate the movies becoming more reliant on CGI, at least it's being implemented in a way where it is enhancing the kills instead of just making them feel overly cheap. But let's move on to the big reason a lot of people talk about and reminisce with Final Destination 5, which I'm fully gonna give its props on: the twist ending. Once our characters look to have survived and have gained their years back by killing the friend who was trying to go after them, Sam is ready to head off to Paris with Molly for this chef program, where it's revealed they are actually on the same flight from the first movie with Alex and his classmates, Flight 180.
Those passengers who got off the plane earlier, what was that all about?
A kid had a panic attack and wanted off the plane. Said he had some kind of vision.
Revealing that this movie actually took place in the year 2000 and it was a prequel to the first Final Destination. Whoa, that was a great twist. I remember watching that at 16 years old is what I must have been when this movie came out, and being mind blown because I never saw the hints. Rewatching it, they did such a great job with having characters have flip phones, old cars in the background, and technology that would feel pretty outdated for the year 2011. The clothing, the lingo, everything about it was hidden so well, you can't help but to clap and give the movie its props because they did it. It was a pretty fun twist for fans of the series, and I think it also made everything go full circle in a nice way. If this had actually been the ending of the franchise, I think I would have been happy with this. Even the little ending gag or kill with Nathan, who had accidentally killed his coworker earlier, saving himself from death and earning the years that his coworker would get, only to find out that guy had a tumor in his head that was going to kill him any day, meaning he didn't earn years, he only earned a few days.
Still can't believe he's gone, though. I guess it was for the best.
What do you mean?
The company did an autopsy for insurance purposes. Turns out Roy had an enlarged blood vessel in his brain so big, about to burst. They said he'd be dead any day now. Life's a bitch.
Final Destination 5, I'm sorry I had at all ever compared you to the Final Destination. No. This movie belongs in the category of the first three movies with genuinely being great for the series. Meaning, we only really have one bad movie, and that makes me pretty happy. But those are my thoughts with the first 5 Final Destination movies. I'm sure when Bloodline comes out, I'm gonna want to do a regular review and a spoiler review because they're seeming to mix up the lore, add new things, and somehow connect all the movies together. You know, as a lover of the series, I'm gonna want to gush out about that with you. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, but remember,
I'll see you soon.